precedent with everybody wanting to.
I know.
I know, it's all right. I'm just kidding. Hey, everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. Well, it's the first Tuesday of the month, which means it's time for Straight Talk with Dr. Doug Lyle, where he answers questions that you have previously submitted. And today we have many questions on subjects such as insomnia, satiety, weight loss plateaus, and sadly, feeling disgusted with the way one looks, which I have felt at times in my life. And right now feel that way about my imperfect haircut right here. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. And anyway, but before I bring on Dr. Lyle, I want to bring on someone named Liz Kahn because it's her birthday today. And her daughter wrote me and said that she wanted to meet me. And literally the only time I have is when I'm on Zoom. And so please welcome Liz to the show. So happy birthday, Liz.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's great to meet you both.
Well, I love your hair, by the way. It's looking way better today for sure. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about yourself and why you wanted to meet me, because I'm always stunned with, because like I just consider myself like, I like really want to meet me, like, but go ahead. Talk.
Sure. So I started, I guess it was right before the pandemic, tried whole food plant-based just kind of on a whim to sort of see, let's see, how does this go? What happens? And I really liked it. And after about a month or so, I said, oh, I'm going to stick with this. And I found you pretty early in the process, and it's made an unbelievable difference in my health and my well-being and my life. And then as I went on, when the kids came home with the pandemic, both my daughters who are in their 20s decided to try it as well. So I've just seen the difference it's made for me, and it's been amazing.
Well, you
56, I don't feel so bad.
Well, your daughters are very smart to have adopted it with you. So how did you find me, by the way?
I think just Googling, just
Wow.
online, just Googling around and found you and listened to your podcasts and watch your videos. And
wow,
and you're so real and honest, which I really appreciate. It's very authentic.
Well, thank you. I mean, I do try to do that. It must be the Aries in me. I wonder what you Googled, nutty vegan chef or hyper conscientious nutcase. So that's fantastic. I love these kind of stories. Did you have any kind of health or other challenges, or just you made
I had been an athlete growing up and pretty active. So I didn't have any big issues. I didn't really do it for weight loss. I had some knee challenges. I was starting to get arthritis. A doctor telling me, oh, you need a rotator cuff surgery, this and that. And thought, well, let me try this and see if this helps with some of the inflammation. And it did. It made a difference.
That's
so
fantastic.
I really like that. And then as a byproduct, I did lose weight. I wasn't in it to lose weight. So that was kind of a nice thing. And then I really have come to enjoy the cooking part as well. I cooked before, now I cook a ton and really love that. So I have all these new little hobbies, and I've met some great people, so that the community part has been wonderful.
That's great. Well, you're just adorable. I so appreciate this. And that was so nice of your daughter to connect with me. Maybe we'll do this like come on for your birthday. Because every day is somebody's birthday, you know?
Yes. Yes.
Adopting the whole food plant-based diet, like either with other friends or family, or has it just been easy peasy?
No, there are definitely challenges. So my mom said, well, what will, my husband's name is Chef, what will Chef do? I'm like, he'll cook. Like, he's been cooking for the past however many years of his life. So I cook what I'm going to eat each night, and he cooks what he's going to eat. So those are the challenges. And then going out to dinner, I think, is a really big challenge. Yeah. So I'm finally at the stage where I'll call ahead and see what they can do, what they can't do. I try and remember to bring things with me. That's gotten better, but it takes a little while. And I think that challenge and just traveling is definitely a challenge in preparing, whether you're far away from home or close to home, and the different events, and then explaining to people, because when you say whole food plant-based, they don't really know what that is. You say vegan, and then they will come up with things that you think, oh, no, actually, I don't want to eat that. I'm going to get sick.
Yeah. So Liz, you don't know this, but I have a birthday present for you that is even better than meeting Chef AJ. Dr. Lyle is like pretty much the most popular guest or one top 5 on the show. And people have to submit questions in advance. And sometimes they wait months for the answer or to get an appointment with him. But because it's your birthday, I will allow you to move to the top of the queue and ask Dr. Lyle right now one short question.
Oh, I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How do I get my husband to adopt this?
Yeah.
Take it away, Dr. Lyle.
He's awesome. I adore, he's fantastic.
I would say the two things are that first of all, we're just setting an example by doing what you're doing. And we're having, we certainly have some of the extra sort of healthy stuff available that's right there. So you fix, 30% more than you're going to eat and be willing to just kind of throw it out and offer it, but and I would probably go slightly upside down whenever you offer it. You just say, I don't know, I think you could probably choke this down, or I'm not sure you could choke it down like that. Okay. I'm not sure you could choke this down, but you might be able to. So if we have a sense of humor about that we're admitting that this food isn't as palatable as the stuff that he's making, then it's then what we're doing is we're doing a very subtle concession, which is that we're admitting that this is a sacrifice and that it's a little bit off kilter. Okay, that means we are sort of reducing the status of it. We're not saying, hey, this is so great and it's the right thing to do, it's healthy for you, it's healthy for the environment. That's just a long list of I'm looking down on you. Okay, if instead we have these signals where some of this good food that I make tastes not too bad, this, if you want to try some of it, I don't know if you could choke it down or not, but you might be able to. Just that sort of an attitude, every now and then we just sort of distribute that out. Then some time goes by with a little bit of that, and now it's not such a status loss to try it and say, well, it isn't too bad, so we essentially sometimes people can get entrenched into a position where they're not going to change. Okay, it's like, I'm going to do it you do your thing, I'm doing my thing, that's it, don't cross my line. Okay, and they don't ever want to admit for a second that you're right, because then when they won't follow through, then they're weak. So instead, the correct position is to act like, no, I'm never doing this. Okay, that actually is the safest position from the standpoint of their status. So what we want to do is never be aiming to get them into a position where they're having to say, oh, wow, I guess this is the right way to do it. No, because they never want to get there. They'll defend getting there pretty vigorously. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to put little tiny pieces out there and say it's not too awful. That way they can start to incorporate some of it, and we might wind up 2 years from now him eating half of his diet out of it. And that is a huge metamorphosis for his health if he were to do that. Okay, but that's how we're going to do it, sideways.
Great, thank you.
You bet.
Dr. Lyle, wouldn't it be just easier for her to withhold sex?
Yeah. Well, AJ, those kinds of things don't occur to me. I mean, that's the women's brain.
I'll mention that to him.
I didn't have access to that idea.
Yeah. Tell him if he does it, he can come on for his birthday and ask Lyle a question. Everybody has there's always something that can, I don't know. So has he seen Game Changers, Liz, the scene about?
Yes. He saw Game Changers. A bunch of, again, during the pandemic when they all watched it, and that's good. That's little tiny bits in there. And so we're not trying to make it fast. We're just trying to see if we can nudge it along. That's the way I look at that. No, that makes sense. I've probably not done the right thing by I was pushing.
Yeah, we can all, yeah, that's right. So we can always back it up.
Well, you know what Dr. Goldhammer would say? He would tell her to ask him to up his life insurance so that she has a better quality of life with her next husband.
Yeah,
When,
that makes sense. You go for the sex thing. Alan goes for the money thing. Like that's it. This is all.
I could ask for both.
Together.
anyway, Liz, you're delightful. I hope to see you sometime. I do classes and maybe we can meet sometime. You live in Boston?
I live in Boston and always looking for reasons to go to California.
Oh my God, then come, because Dr. Lyle is going to be doing you got to come for our next, you got to get on my mailing list and make sure you come. Because
yeah, I think I am on your mailing list.
Oh, we had people come for Virginia and Canada, and then we can meet in person, and then bring your husband. I'll just
I will
beat him over the head. Happy birthday, Liz. And thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye-bye. So Dr. Lyle, that was very nice of you. And before you answer the questions, did you want to talk about your fabulous seminar that's going to be happening in February, which is now?
I sure will. Hold on a second. Let's see if I can do this really quickly. Ready?
Yep.
See how this works. Let's see if I can do this, AJ.
Okay.
Okay. Can people see it?
Perfect. Doug, what beautiful art.
Yes. You have no idea how hard that is. So that's Jen and I and her two dogs, and this is going to be a seminar we're doing on Sunday morning of February 19th. Now, AJ and Linda have a seminar that day, but theirs is later in the day, so you can watch both. Just like a guy that watches football, he tells the wife, "I'm watching 2 games today." We got 2. So this is it's called my talk is going to be called The Adjacent Possible. So if you're looking for just health and diet stuff, no, you just go to AJ's thing, and you got to Colin Campbell and Essie and all the smart people about all that. This is about Jen and I talking about sort of personal transformation and all kinds of different parts of life, and self-confidence and self-esteem and things of that nature. So you can see there's some really great concepts. You could just tell just by looking. Rocket ships, brilliant chickens, and Doug playing golf. It's all going to be fun. So anyway, that's our story. And you can go to, we'll hold this on a second. You can sign up at this thing, truetolife.us. That's where you could sign up if you want. And if you can't see it that day, that allows you to see it anytime, forever. So anyway, that's our story. But thank you, AJ, for letting me plug that.
Sure. And I put that in both the chat and the show notes, and I signed up the minute that it was available, and I can't wait. But I think Jen has more than 2 dogs now.
Yes, I know. But those are, I just put 2 because it's very hard for me to draw those dogs, AJ.
Yeah. Well, I think you should start selling your art, because I think we have a market for that. Seriously.
All right. I'm going to hit the stop share because I think that's how to do that.
Yeah, perfect. Great job. Okay,
right.
So jump into the questions. So Dr. Lyle, the first question from Melissa, I get variations of this all the time, and it's kind of poignant because people really feel this way. She says, I'm in my 50s and I'm close to my ideal weight, but all I see is how old I look. I hate the signs of aging to the point of disgust. It's hideous. I have several friends who were dancers and models, and none of them report feeling good about themselves. I wonder if it's ever really possible for women to feel good about the way we look. How can I stop feeling disgusted and disappointed with the way I look? This is prevalent in our society at all ages, at all weights. This is pandemic, if you ask me.
Yeah. that mind of yours, just a crack up. Yes, that's the real pandemic, right? That's a good question. That I'm not an expert in this. My way of looking at problems is to essentially have the following model, and the following model is that we have naturally, what happens is our mind looks for a thing that we're going to call the goal, which is a better circumstance than the one that we're in. So literally, if I'm having trouble reading something, this is a goal, is to pick up these glasses and put them on and see if it helps. So that could be a goal, or the goal could be to win an Olympic gold medal. But either way, it's the same process. which is that I'm going to try to do something to change my circumstances, to close the distance between where I am now and where it is that I think I could get to that would be worth getting to. And so what we do in that regard is to break the process down into the stepping stones. And oftentimes if we get stopped, it's because there's something that we don't know enough how to do. So we don't know enough, or another way of saying we don't know enough is that our mind may not have engineered the skills yet. So for example, if it's a dance move, you're like, you could say, well, in some way you don't know enough how to do it. But in another way, you could say, well, it's an interesting way of knowing, but it's knowledge about what muscles to contract or what pattern in order to make a move. So literally, anything that we're up to here is closing the distance. We've got stepping stones to do it. Now we may wind up that we wind up hitting constraints where we're literally not able to do it. So if you're going to try to be a fancy weightlifter, you finally reach a limit that you can't lift any more weight. And you're like, well, my goal is to do this, but then that goal fades away. It's not possible to reach that goal. So there are goals that are possible and there are goals that are not possible. And if you saw my little slide, that my talk is about the adjacent possible, which means there's a goal or there's a way that your life could change that's adjacent to you, it's next to you, and it's possible, okay? And our job is to get to the adjacent possible, right? Now, sometimes the adjacent possible can only get us this far. That's what the adjacent possible is. That's a stepping stone. And then there's another adjacent possible once we get to there. And then there's another adjacent possible once we get to there. And then we can get to here. So our goal may not be in the adjacent possible. It's going to require 10 successive adjacents possible in order to get there. But we could. Some things you can't get to. So you can't run the clock backwards. Okay. So we can't go from 50 to 49 to 48 to 47 and back down to 29, which when I was a kid, my mother always said, that's the ideal age, 29. And then we tried to morph it, 39's the new 29. Now I'm like, 60's the new 40. What are you people talking about? So now we have the only process that I know to change anything is to get new information and possibly get new abilities and possibly get ourselves to a new adjacent possible. The adjacent possible that this questioner is seeking is, how can I feel good about how it is that I look? Okay. That's an interesting adjacent possible. And I'm not sure what the answer would be. I'm starting to think of some ideas about how that could be. One way to probably not do that is that if you're 50 and you have done everything that you can reasonably do to essentially help yourself appear in the best light. So you're in good physical shape. You have done things that are non-invasive, like maybe you've got a few gray hairs and you dye your hair. And you do it with something that's non-toxic, that's not going to hurt you. You may consider cosmetic surgery if it's, not risky, not limited within your budget, and you can be reasonably confident that the person that's doing it knows what they're doing. It's all reasonable. There's things that you can do: clothes, makeup, cosmetic surgery, hair. These are physical condition, diet, sleep. All of these, whatever the beauty aids are, you can do it all. And those may be the only stepping stones that you can do, and then you still cannot get there. One of the reasons could be that you are comparing yourself to competitors that are actually not appropriate for you. So a 70-year-old lady, it would be tragic for her to be feeling like she's competing with 35-year-old ladies. Okay, so that is I don't know. I've seen a few really attractive 70-year-olds. I actually have, and I'm like, they were more attractive than 35-year-olds I've seen. So, but the point is that but in general, what can cause a lot of psychic pain is that we are actually trapped in a situation where we are the esteem process that's involved is we have ourselves competing with people at a standard that is beyond our reach. Okay, so now I can tell you that usually such frustration will reasonably fade. And usually the frustration is there because it still feels like it might be within the adjacent possible. So let me give you an example of this. A really fine young high school quarterback feels like he's overlooked by the colleges. He's good, but he wasn't great in high school. He didn't have great stats. He felt like the coach kind of held him back from showing his stuff in their offense, and he believes he can play college football. And so he's frustrated by this. So now he goes and tries and works hard. He goes to junior college and he plays a little bit there. And then he's done with the 2 years there. And then he feels like he's still not getting what he deserves. And he goes and he tries to walk on into major college. And as this story goes, if he's honest, which he probably is, once he walks on at a major college and tries to try it out and he sees the competition, he realizes, I don't belong here. Okay, I love playing football and I'm a good football player and maybe I can play with my friends or there's some little, league I can play in somehow, but I don't belong here. Okay. Problem is that a 50-year-old attractive lady that has done everything that she can and finds her competitiveness fading, she can be essentially fixing on the mythical 29-year-old or the theoretical competitor who's 39, who's similarly attractive but is 10 years younger and doesn't have the aging cues. And this can be pretty frustrating and upsetting if that's what she's sitting on for her. That's where she's got her mind anchored. So not a bad idea would be to put yourself in circumstances where you are not essentially interacting and in any way competing with those people. So finding places to spend time with people that are essentially your age-ish. I remember my mother telling me this when she was, about 55. And that is that we were talking about self-confidence and self-esteem and attractiveness and all that sort of jazz. So yeah, I'm not making this up. I mean, this conversation goes back 30 years, but this actually happened because I remember it. And it was my mom and dad and we would talk about philosophical and psychological stuff like this. And my mom said, it was interesting today that I had 2 events. And one of those events, there was a bunch of young, pretty women around, and I felt dowdy was the word that she used. And then I went to this other event, and I was like the youngest, lady there, and I felt young and good looking. Interesting, like the same day, a very different feeling that she had. So sometimes what the problem is you may want or need to, if you can, engineer your life in a situation where the situations bring out feelings in you where you feel young and good looking. And that's quite possible. I will say one other thing. I'll spill the beans on something that I did in my life. It wasn't illegal. I had a very open lady friend in my life, and one day she dragged me to a place up here in Northern California called Harbin Hot Springs, where it's a nudist place.
I went to culinary school there. Oh my God.
Okay, so I got dragged. You know the friend, my friend was Melissa. So Melissa drags me to this place, almost kicking and screaming, but I couldn't look like such a wimp that I couldn't handle it. You know what I mean? So I had to be brave. So I was brave and I went. And the first day was very uncomfortable, but I wasn't going to take my clothes off. So I'm walking around in, I don't know, a tan bathing suit or whatever it was. And but after 24 hours, I actually got used to it. It was an amazing process where you start to habituate to it. And so there's all these pools around, and it's, spring water and all this sort of thing. And then a really interesting thing happened. It wound up, and that's the value of wacky open friends. The Alan and AJ are my friends that are hyper conscientious nuts that have me always feeling a little guilty that I'm not doing it well enough. Those are useful, important friends to have. And then it's useful to have wacky friends too that help you push your boundaries and do things that you wouldn't have considered. I never would have done that. But what happened was interesting. And that is that after, I think we're there maybe 3 days. And by day 2, what happened was I started to, you're facing the worst case scenario that could ever happen to you. Like the worst case scenario is that people could see you without your clothes on, for God's sakes. Like, how bad is that? That's as bad as it gets. And you find out that everybody isn't like rolling their eyes and pointing, and they're not like, oh my God, I'm surviving the worst case scenario. It's like actually textbook out of cognitive behavioral therapy for obsessive compulsive disorder. It's like that's exactly what you do for obsessive compulsive disorder is you gently face your worst fear, whether it's not washing your hands or not stepping on the crack on the sidewalk. That's what they do. But I realized, oh my gosh, this is exposure therapy for fear about your appearance. And myself and almost everybody else I know, except Alan, has some fear about their appearance. Alan probably wouldn't be self-conscious at all because he's an odd duck, but I certainly was. And so then it goes away, and then you would see something that is remarkable. You see the remarkable 2 things. You see remarkable differences in humans that you get to see them. The clothing makes them very similar. It similarizes people. You take all their clothes away, and suddenly you see the vast variation in humans, and you see people that are have major weight problems, not very attractive. But pretty soon, what happens is you start to there are attractive people, but you start to realize kind of everybody has flaws, and everybody's kind of it's kind of interesting. You started picking up the individuality, and nobody's walking around with makeup, lipstick, and no clothes on. And so, I mean, there might have been, but that wasn't it. It's a natural place. And so what happens is you start to lose your fear, and you start to lose your judgmentalness, which is an amazing thing. And I thought after that, wow, for somebody who is really afraid of and embarrassed about their appearance, that could be one of the most amazing therapeutic events that you could ever do in your life. You literally face the worst case scenario, and you find out that, hey, you're fine. Nobody's gawking, nobody's upset, nobody's laughing, nobody's really sneaking any peeks, nobody's rolling their eyes, nobody's anything. It's just people literally back in their natural habitat. And so that was I didn't do it again, but I was really amazed at what happened inside my own head inside of 72 hours. And also in my partner's head, she had the same kind of thing go on with her. It was like, that is a really interesting process that went on. And it was later, I don't know, at some point I realized, no, that's exposure and response prevention in OCD. And we're all, could be a little bit OCD about our appearance. So that's one way to, so now Dr. Lyle's promoting a nudist colony. No, but what I'm doing is, you might find some relative pride in how it is that you absolutely look just the way you are. because you're not necessarily hiding it and running from it. You're finding out that it is effectively not anything for anybody to be either upset or thrilled about, and nobody's looking like they're thrilled about anybody. Because everybody, no matter how attractive, they've got flaws, and they're somehow not as fancy when you pull the clothes off of them. So anyway, that's two interesting ideas.
Well, then we can all just go to a strip club.
There you go. That was something I said last time or something.
All right. No, this is
track of this.
This is so interesting. Well, this is another one. It's not exactly on the way she looks. It's a body dysmorphia. This is from Sheila. And she says she lost 70 pounds. She has 10 pounds to go to reach a healthy BMI, but she's 5'11" and she was told she had the bone structure of a large man, according to a doctor who measured her wrist when she was a teenager. She says, I'm experiencing body dysmorphia and my self-image doesn't match what I see in the photos in the mirror. Does this ever go away? I hear a lot from people that lose weight, that they feel this way.
Yeah, it probably will go away, and I would say almost certainly will, but it is something that this gets to be sort of just a little interesting discussion in psychology, and that is that what you have is you have inside of your head an enormous collection of data that tells you about yourself. Okay, in fact, I call it your self as opposed to other parts of your brain. Yourself is a collection of knowledge specifically about you. Your knowledge about George Washington doesn't have anything to do with you. It has to do with memory circuits about history and the country and all that sort of jazz. But you have a lot of knowledge specifically about you. And interestingly enough, a huge amount of that knowledge about you comes from other people reacting to you. So you have a great deal of you have a continuous stream of interaction with other people and how it is that they act towards you. And that actually tells you about yourself. You can easily imagine a world where there's no mirrors. Okay, there weren't any mirrors in the natural world. Once in a while on a still lake somewhere, but there's people that never went anywhere near a still lake. So how did people have any notion of kind of what they looked like and what other people were seeing? Well, undoubtedly there was fascination with mirrors at some point. People started polishing steel at some point, but that's not going to be happening 30,000 years ago. And it was still important, still part of life. Well, how does that work? Feedback. Okay, feedback. So you learn, even if you're a blind person, is going to have some knowledge about what it is that they must look like, because other people are going to describe it to them and they're going to be reacting to them as a result of this. So that means that a lot of your knowledge about yourself, actually, a writer, I think it was named Cooley, way back in the early 1900s, called it the looking glass self. In other words, you're sort of looking at yourself through the eyes of other people. It's not the only way we know about ourselves, but it's a very, very important way. And the thing is that if you've been, 80 pounds or 100 pounds heavier, if you've been substantially different in what your appearance is, then what happens is that you've got a lot of knowledge in your memory banks about yourself. They come from tens of thousands of interactions with other people over your life course. So that has become kind of part of you. That's what you understand yourself to be. Okay. When you make a major change, everybody doesn't fall all over themselves and change, because so many of those signals that have to do with your appearance are very subtle. So it isn't, sometimes they're less subtle than others. Like if somebody hasn't seen you and then they see you and you've lost 50 pounds, they're like, are you okay? I mean, you look great, but i.e., did you get cancer? Like, what's happening? So, but most what's going to happen is you're running into strangers all the time, and they treat you slightly differently if you are 20 pounds overweight than if you're 120 pounds overweight. They're not grossly different in how they treat you. It's somewhat different. And then sometimes it's quite a bit different. Okay. And so as a result, it's going to take time for these thousands of little interactions to essentially morph your knowledge of yourself from what it was before to what you are now. And you can get your weight down, and that still hasn't happened. Those experiences are lagging behind. You're still going to need thousands of more interactions with other people for you to start to integrate the fact that other people see you differently now. And then you'll start seeing yourself differently. Okay. That's you can't rush that. That's not up to us. That's up to the nature of human psychology that makes that transformation. And there can be anxiety associated with it because you're starting to get some feedback that looks one way, but you don't quite believe it, and you're not sure you're going to be able to hold on to it. It can be a swirling cauldron of anxiety, and you can feel like you're on shaky ground for quite a while. But eventually, what happens is it becomes essentially a new you, where a new major aspect of you has now been integrated, and you now are essentially, you're in touch with what your appearance is now doing to other people and how they're going to react, and i.e. it's me, whereas it may not quite feel like that in the early going. So that's be patient, it will come.
Okay, thank you. Well, it seems like if you compare yourself to others, you're always going to be unhappy.
Not if you're Alan.
Well, true. He's
always looking down.
He's a superior being. But it's interesting because I felt better. I mean, I when I moved from the desert to LA, I definitely felt better about myself because,
That's really interesting, AJ. That makes a great. I think you told me that. And you just get away from all the 27-year-old valley girls parading up around the mall. And now we get out into the desert where there's a lot of retired people there. And now suddenly you're the spring chicken. So, and very good. It makes a lot of sense.
The secret is surround yourself with people that are heavier and less attractive. I mean,
these are the true. This is a new book we'll write together.
Yeah, that's right. You do the long answer and I'll do the short answer, like we did with Lexi. Yeah.
That's it. There you go.
I actually think that's a great idea. It's going, okay. So again, another poignant question from Susan. I live alone with my dog. My family is out of state. I don't have any friends. Mostly I'm pretty satisfied with, except when I start thinking about purpose and that I should be contributing to society. How do I get and stay involved with something outside of myself? How important is community and philanthropy as part of living a long, healthy life? Because just to say, we've had people like Dan Buettner on with the Blue Zones, and they talk about this ikigai, finding your purpose. And some people think it's important.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because they're on to something, but let me explain what it is that they are discovering. It's kind of like when you watch a dog sniffing around in a yard, and they're sniffing and sniffing and sniffing, and then somehow they finally find what they were looking for. Usually something we wouldn't want. But point is that's kind of what you're hearing in people. Is they're sniffing for something. And now I'll tell you what they're sniffing for. Okay. So what you're sniffing for is the situation that humans had in the Stone Age. So they are actually seeking a Stone Age set of circumstances, a good set of Stone Age circumstances. So let me tell you what that looked like. So what that looked like is, if you're man or woman, you would spend all day long with your best friends. That's what you would do. And if you squabbled with one, then you wouldn't be spending that time with her for the next, few days or something until somehow things cooled off. But the bottom line is, basically every day of your life, you were spending your life with the people that you liked the most. What were you doing? If you're a woman, you're cooking, watching kids, digging for potatoes, picking berries. That's what you were doing. And you didn't think, well, what is my higher purpose? Because there is no higher purpose. There is no higher purpose in life than basically trying to be as valuable as you can to your village. So these days, people are a little lost because they're disconnected from the village and they're thinking, well, what can I do for humanity? What can I do for the earth? Yeah, you're lost. Okay. And you're very, very unlikely to find a lot of satisfaction there because you're not seeing the whites of the people's eyes and the crinkling of their smiles and their joy and their laughter as the two of you or the six of you are laughing about things that mean something to us and are talking about things that are important to us. And we're trying to help each other through the vicissitudes. And we're trying to get calories out of an environment that it's not necessarily that easy to get calories out of. And we're digging for whole natural food and we need to. And it's a necessity for our families, our mates, and to actually provision relatives there in the group if they're falling on hard times. So somebody can't, some lady's got a broken leg and she's a good friend of our sister and we are insuring her. In other words, so we will now produce extra and we'll take it over to her family in her tent this afternoon and she'll be very grateful. And if you've ever done anything for somebody that really needs help and they're grateful, you know, oh, there's no higher thing in the world than this. That there is no greater purpose than that. You will feel it in your soul. It's part of your nature. So the vast majority of problems that we have today as people are because of the mismatch between our nature and the environment that we find ourselves in. So almost all health problems, not 100%, but almost all health problems of the current environment would not exist if you transport yourself into a Stone Age environment. So if you're overweight, that would be gone. If you are drug addicted, that would be gone. Okay. If you are sort of flabby and not very good shape, that would be gone. If you've lost your flexibility and you can barely get out of a chair, but you're not overweight and etc. Well, believe me, you'd have to be bending down. There are no chairs. You'd be rising up off the floor. I remember JP when we did that seminar at the Mermaid in Los Angeles. I watched JP for the first time. I'd never met him. And he had all kinds of interesting things to say about elderly people. And one of the things he said was something that I witnessed every Saturday morning of my youthful life when my dad would drag me to judo, because my dad was a big judo guy. And I watched the old Japanese men who were in their 70s able to easily get up, whereas they sat on the floor. They didn't sit in chairs. And JP says those people don't get disabled in their old age because they're the old judo people, old martial arts guys. They sit on the ground the way you are to do so in such a club. And so they're used to getting up off the floor. It's like, wow, I'm going to remember that when I get to an old age. A chair is not a natural thing. So many of the problems, there's no osteoporosis in the Stone Age. People are banging around on uneven ground, and that the force of hopping over a little stream and your foot hitting the hard earth on the other side that sends shock waves through your system and keeps your bones strong. Where are the problems? There's no heart disease, for God's sakes. They're eating too much whole natural food. There's no cancer. It's almost non-existent. It's like, what is there? Well, there's little problems, of course. Once in a while they get a bad tooth, surprisingly few. So what am I saying? I'm saying that you were designed for that natural world and your body is incredibly good at, keeping itself in great repair if that's where you are. Okay. What about your mind, your emotional life? Same thing. Exactly the same thing. So now we know people are sniffing out that, gee, I don't seem to have a sense of community. My life doesn't seem to have purpose. What should I be doing? And I would not say, oh, well, join a hunter-gatherer troop in East Africa. Okay. But I could tell you, if you did, in no time, you wouldn't be unhappy. You wouldn't be depressed. You would be in spectacular physical condition. And your life would have incredible meaning. In other words, you'd be participating every day with people that you'd be finding the people that you like the most in that village of 50 people. You'd find the 3 or 4 people that you like the best within a few months, and you'd be hanging out with them all day long, scheming about how to do things cool. That's what you would do. Okay. So when we look at that, we're like, wow, a lot of the problems, so psychological problems of the modern environment are going to go by the wayside. That's right. No lack of purpose, basically no depression, no disgust of one's physical form because it's overweight or something. You're not going to have young, beautiful girls walking by you all day long in the mall with makeup on, looking like super normal stimuli. No, everybody's going to be. We're going to level that out because we're not going to have that. And so you're going to be a valued member of your community every day of your life. No insomnia. You work too hard, you're going to go to sleep. You're going to sleep like a rock. Okay. Wow. That's interesting. So that, in answer to your question, I don't think, some people can work at an insurance cubicle somewhere, make a good living using their mind, and go home and support themselves and their families. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all. But what I'm saying is some people will starve emotionally in such circumstances. So some people are better off doing something where you're interacting with people and you're trying to help them. Okay. So for this person that's asking this question, we need to be thinking about, she sounded like philanthropy, so she may not need to work for money. Well, then we need to be finding something that fits your psychology where you're contributing to your community. Some of the most excitement I've seen out of adult people was I used to belong to Rotary many years ago. And it's a service organization, like there's many of these service organizations, and Rotary is a big one. And once a year, these guys guys and gals would go down to like El Salvador or Nicaragua or something, and a bunch of people from Rotary would descend. There'd be 40 or 50 people there, and they'd build a whole bunch of houses for people in some village in Nicaragua. And they're doing it as a team. Okay, so they're working at their best with a team to try to do something valuable for other people. And these guys would come back ecstatic, like they couldn't wait to do it again. They had the best 2 weeks of their life, and they'd always report like, I can't wait to go back next year. So what an interesting thing that was for me to witness and to hear that. And of course, it fits. And so that's why a lot of people, Silicon Valley is such an exciting place for many people, because a startup is like that. Like, gosh, we're this little team. We're all trying to get rich and not trying to serve the world. But they're a team of people that is working really, really hard together interdependently. That's actually, with something on the line that we could lose and that we could win. That doesn't often work, for a lot of jobs. And maybe it doesn't. Maybe we don't want to have that kind of risk if you're raising kids or trying to get a retirement or whatever. But the notion of interdependence with a group and trying to do something really productive and well, that's interesting. Okay. And so you could get that by joining a pickleball team at some local club. Okay. And you could get that, i.e. interdependence, repeat exposure, and giving my best effort. Okay. Things like that. But another nice thing to add to that somewhere in your life is, what am I doing that actually is improving somebody else's life? And if we add that element in there, then we wind up with a life that's more balanced in the way that we were designed.
That's great. Thank you, Dr. Lyle. That was really interesting. All right. So I have 2 questions they're on the same subject. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to read both, one short, one long, because they're basically about plateaus. So Lynette's is short. She says, my weight has stalled at 20 pounds from goal. This must mean I have hit equilibrium. How do I overcome the psychological barrier of having to eat less food or do exercise in order to get the scale to move in my favor? And then Cheryl says that she's been whole food, plant-based, SOFAS-free for 2 years, lost 70 pounds with 20 pounds to go and has stalled. She's talking a little bit more about the cram circuit, because she says that she loves to eat large portions. So this way of eating is ideal. However, once she finishes her meal, her stomach is comfortably full. She feels it triggers a cram incident. So anyway, any advice for these two ladies?
Yeah, it's certainly something that we're going to see, and that doesn't surprise us any. So that the reasons why we can be there, there are several. So reason number one is that sometimes that's where the diet that you're eating, which is is probably a very, very good diet. That's there's going to be three variables, to my way of thinking, that determine your weight. I would call it your genetics. We could widen that a little bit and call it your biology. That's probably a better way to do it, because genetics is going to account for 90% of your biology, but not all of it, because we're going to have to throw in age as a factor. We could throw in that you've got a thyroid problem as a factor. In other words, there could be things that weren't straight genetics, so we're going to call it your biology. So your biology is one major determinant. Your exercise level is a determinant, and the caloric density of your diet is a determinant. So those three things, all things being reasonably equal, each one of those, we can independently obviously see the differences in people. So we can see huge differences in people's biologies, and we see that makes a big difference, all things being equal, exercise level equal, diet being equal, two different people. One of them is 100 pounds overweight and one of them is no pounds overweight. Why? Genetics. Okay. Neither one of them walk around the block. Both of them eat unbelievably rich trash. One of them is 100 pounds overweight. The other one's no pounds overweight. Why? Genetics. Okay. So that's one thing. We could have people where the genetics are the same, to monozygotic twins, and the diet's the same, but one of them's exercising and one of them doesn't. How much difference are we going to see? Don't know. Tricky puzzle. Okay. So we'd actually have to look at that. The answer is probably something, and the thing is, in some cases, it may be 4 pounds, and in other cases, it may be 24 pounds. So there's going to be individual differences in how big of a factor exercise is going to be on a specific individual. But I have no doubt that it's there. Okay, so it is not just genes and diet. You have to put exercise in the pile. It's part of the story. Okay, you don't want to exercise typically any more than you want to eat exactly the right foods, etc. Why? Your Stone Age brain is an energy conserving device. So you're going to want to conserve energy, which means you want to eat the richest food in the environment that's the easiest to get to, and then not do any exercise, of course, i.e. McDonald's drive-through. You've literally scripted out, by looking at human biology, exactly what you see in the commercial processes of the world. Precisely. Okay. So so now we realize, okay, if you're 20 pounds over, there's 3 reasons possible, and a combination of all 3: your biology, your exercise level, or your diet. Okay. So with your diet, there is essentially one fundamental problem, which is that for some strange reason, your satiety mechanisms aren't working in such a way as to get you down to where it is that would be optimum for you. That's sort of an odd thing. I wouldn't expect that to very often be the problem. That would be a rare problem if that were true. The dietary problem that we would see wouldn't be that the satiety mechanism wouldn't be working right. We would see that the person's eating a diet that might be 650 calories a pound and needs to be 600. So a very slight difference in calorie density of somebody's diet, 50, could result in a 50 calorie a day difference of that equilibrium, and 50 calories a day is no slouch. That would be 4 or 5 pounds a year. Okay. So in 3 or 4 years, somebody that was had a very slight subtle change of their diet might wind up 15 or 20 pounds less after 3 or 4 years. You might say 3 or 4 years, Dr. Lyle, oh my God, I don't want to wait that long. I'm not really interested in those kinds of concerns. I'm interested in how it all works. So AJ changed her diet. It was, 27 months. That's what it took. And if we looked at the last 10 pounds, that last 10 pounds might have taken 8 months. We'd have to go back and look, but it was like, she just kept doing what she was doing, but there it was slowly grinding away at a few calories a day of fat were coming off of her completely unconsciously. So anyway, the point is, the very first point is that one or both of these people or neither may actually already be at a very reasonable equilibrium. It's just they don't like it. So just because what you think is the right weight for you versus what your genetics and your biology think is the right weight for you could be two different things. So I've seen women that looked great, that were 5'5" and 110 pounds, and I've seen women who looked great who were 5'5" and 150 pounds. Okay, and they were both in excellent condition. And I can remember the 5'5", 150 pounds person being irritated about it. It's like, sorry, that's biology. Okay, your diet did exactly what it was supposed to do. The fact is, you're strong and athletic and curvy, and it's like that's the way it is. Okay, so you don't get to look like the girl that's 5'5" and 110 pounds because you got different genetics. Okay, so I'm not sure that either of these people is really 20 pounds overweight. Perhaps they are, and they very well could be. At which point we look at this and we say, okay, well, if you've done the diet extremely well, then there's two things left. There's only two variables left on the equation. One of them is genetics. Well, or biology. We're not going to change that unless you have a thyroid problem or some such thing that's been undiagnosed, which you probably don't. So now we're down to 20 pounds and there's two variables left on the chart. There's your exercise level and there's your caloric density. That's it. Okay. The third would be, gee, can I get myself to eat less and go a little bit hungry? That's losing weight without losing your mind mistake. In other words, you're trying to lose your mind to lose the weight. So we don't believe in that here. We believe that there must be another answer. And probably, I could see easily where our other answer would take us to 8 pounds over your ideal, at which point that really is where your biology is drawing the line on you. Anybody that was ever 70 pounds heavier has some pretty thick genes. Okay, so you've come an awful long way, done brilliantly to get where it is that you are. However, there may not be 20 pounds left in this game for you, not without losing your mind and under eating your hypothalamus. That's no way to live. So we will have to do the very best we can at the variables that we have and live with the result. Okay. So exercise that one of these two people mentioned, you bet that's a big deal. Let's go back to the Stone Age. What did that actually look like? That didn't look like 30 minutes on an exercise bike. It didn't even remotely look like 30 minutes on an exercise bike. So it is very possible that there are some people that need to actually spend quite a bit of time doing some legitimate exercise and get in very, very good physical condition to the point where they can go an hour at moderate, aerobic, fairly substantial exercise, which is way more than most people do. Okay. So most people are So anyway, keep that in mind, ladies, that I feel like the odds are good that the diet may not be a variable that we're going after. It could be, but given where you are, you're this close and you've done this well, check how much exercise we're doing. If the exercise we're doing is moderate and decent in 30 minutes, then that's plenty to optimize your physical health. In other words, that's really good. And I'm not pushing anybody past that. But if we're irritated at our weight and it's tenaciously sitting at 20 pounds above where we think it ought to be, then that extra half an hour of exercise done religiously, we may start to do that and work your way into that next level of physical fitness. And 6 months from now, we may look back and you're down 7 pounds. In other words, okay, that was a variable in the equation. Maybe we don't, but my belief is we probably will. So keep that in mind. There's, two things we can control: exercise level and caloric density. If you're already doing a great job, I would never reach for door number 3, i.e., I need to start eating less than I want to eat. No, I would never do that. I might reach for lower calorie density, in other words, a little bit more raw food and a little bit less cooked food. I might alter that at some point. But if you're doing a good job on the diet and it's been this successful so far, I think the next move is to look at where we're so different than the Stone Age. And that most likely thing is we need to work out a little bit harder.
Thank you. So 2 questions similar from different people. Ripley and Lisa both have insomnia. They have no trouble falling asleep, but they both routinely wake up at 3 a.m. getting back to sleep. They both seem to have good exercise habits and also getting sunshine. One of them is working with a CBTI therapist, but one of them has suffered for 8 years and one for a year and a half. What can you say about insomnia?
I wouldn't know about those questions because it sounds like they're doing quite a good job. I would do one thing if you've got the guts and you're frustrated enough to do it.
I bet you're going to say go to True North and fast.
Actually, I wasn't going to say that, but that is actually not a bad idea. That's the second idea. My first idea is to go camping. Okay. So a lot of times what we find is that you need the natural world to really be setting a circadian rhythm. And you'll find people that struggle with insomnia of various kinds. And yet if they get themselves actually back into the Stone Age circadian rhythm, they don't have a problem. So it might be useful to check and see whether or not that is actually a solution. So, you may want to think about a 1-week camping trip somewhere. If you don't want to be too uncivilized, go somewhere that is, that you don't have to go out in the woods where you hear the wolves howl and you're terrified. But you want to go to a situation where it gets very dark at night and so away from the city lights, and it's all calming down, and you're far, maybe you're in a cabin, whatever it is, but we shut everything down. We're not attached to social media and email and movies or anything else. And it all goes quiet. Okay, we're living like we're back in the 1930s. We're back on Walton's Mountain. Okay. So now it's amazing how as Yogi Berra would say, it gets late early out here. Okay. By the time it's been dark for an hour, you can have a solemn feeling of, whoa, it's dark. Okay. So isn't this about time we're sort of turning in? And it won't be the time you're turning in now because, people are up well past that because, you just flick on the lights. You're just going to extend the day. Why are we extending the day? Well, we're not that physically tired because we haven't exercised that much. Well, why haven't we exercised that much? Well, because we don't live in the Stone Age. So we aren't there digging out there for potatoes for 8 hours a day, for God's sakes. Like, well, I did exercise. I went to the gym. Yeah, well, you didn't exercise like our ancestors exercised. So you got some residual energy left over. you're not that wiped out, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. However, one of the problems is it's like, well, I think I'll just go on Facebook and see what's happening. It's like, okay, well, now we got a little bit of light hitting our eyes for a while, and now we're up and we've sort of disrupted a circadian rhythm. So this isn't a crime, but if it's a problem because we've got some turbulence in a circadian rhythm and we're waking up at 3 a.m., it could be that we are actually a natural, serious early bird, and that with an appropriate set of circumstances, we might go to sleep really early. And if we go to sleep really early, we might be getting up at 3 or 4 a.m. and we may be done. We may be fully satiated. Whereas if you're going to bed at 9:30 and you get up at 3:30, we've chopped one too many REM cycles out of there, and you're tired and you've got insomnia and you're frustrated. Okay. But we may find out, it's a little bit different. If I go to bed at 7:30, I'm actually okay. Okay. So this is, but who goes to bed at 7:30? I wouldn't do that. I'm not that tired. I still have things I want to look at in the world. Understandable. But you may want to check and see whether or not you're actually a natural, determined early bird genetically, and that if we stick you back in a Stone Age environment, it turns out, you regulate pretty well, or something shifts. So again, goes back to my main theory of life, which is most of the problems that we're going to see have to do with a mismatch between the Stone Age that we were designed for and the modern environment that you live in. And obviously, I don't want to go back to the Stone Age, but when there's a problem, you want to look there at that template first. That is very often, loneliness, depression, weight problems, health problems, insomnia, drug addiction. You look at problem after problem after problem, lack of meaning in life. What does it all add up to? All of it, that all goes away in the Stone Age.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Well, Fred Flintstone's excess weight didn't go away in the Stone Age. Or the skipper on Gilligan's Island. So they weren't telling the truth on television. Television has lied to us.
How the skipper remained with that debt for 5 years on Gilligan's Island is truly out there. That's great, AJ. That's beautiful.
It's a mystery. He must have had snacks with him. I don't know what these individuals are eating, but people in the chat are saying, are they drinking any caffeine or alcohol? Because I find both those can disrupt people's sleep.
Could be. It sounds like our people there are pretty fastidious people, so they're probably not. But we may have a situation that I'm describing, that they're a little phase shifted away from their natural genetics, and they may be able to discover that in a few days in a remote cabin somewhere, and it may surprise them, and just may not be able to change your ways that quickly. But knowing what the root cause is, if we can find it, may be valuable.
Yep. Want to call it a day, or you want one more?
One more.
Okay, you have a choice. There's one on satiety and there's one on getting esteem from the internal audience.
We're going to do the second one.
Getting esteem from the internal audience. Okay, I don't quite understand this question. So Kelly asks, what is the best way for introverts to get positive esteem feedback? And can you talk about assessing introversion versus agoraphobia versus depression? What would be the cause of someone stuck in a cycle of feedback with internal audience not wanting to even venture for external feedback, and or external feedback is positive, but the internal audience is negative? Can you break out of this? Do you understand the question?
Yeah, I understand enough.
Okay.
It's going to turn out that that sort of anxious and introverted and depressive genes they're a club. Okay. So you can have a person that's anxious and it's extroverted. You can have that. You can have a person that is introverted and very happy. You can have that. But it's going to turn out that this little cauldron of experience that we're hearing here is common. In other words, it's common for people to be introverted and to be also worried about going out in the world and then have that even if they get positive feedback, they still are very self-critical. In other words, this is a suite of genes that builds this personality. And you might look at it and you say, well, boy, that's not going to get us out in the world flirting with a bunch of people and finding a bunch of fancy mates. So, gee, I don't want my kid to be like that. I want her to be out there and bold and be the bold one from the commercials. Okay, in the 1960s, aging myself now. So however, so what value could that have been? Well, the value that could have been socially is that you're very humble. So that people can't miss that. There's a submissiveness and humility that goes along with all of the things that the person is describing. That personality is almost never kicked out of the village. Okay, so the bold personality could run up into conflict with some alpha somewhere along the line, male or female, and wind up getting kicked out of the village over conflicts of interest. The submissive, very quiet person will not. Like they're in the truth. Okay, they're not taking any attention away from anybody else. They're not competing. Any mates that they are seeking come to them very quietly. You know what I'm saying? But this is kind of that this is a different creature. On the other end, we have the bold, arrogant, bragging, loud, dominant. It's like that's on one end of this continuum, and on the other end of the continuum is the polar opposite. And all of us are somewhere in between. So I'm somewhere in the middle. The Alan's up on the high. Okay, so this person is down on that side of this continuum, and that it's so the internal audience is by nature pretty critical. Okay, so therefore even positive feedback from the outside world still if you compliment that person, their internal audience is saying yes but. In other words, this is the genetics of true humility. And there are people like this. So what do? Well, you try to find circumstances that this is Dr. Jen Hawk's potted plant theory. It's such a beautiful analogy for how to manage things when we have a specific kind of personality. So Alan has a specific kind of personality that I learned very, very early in life that Alan wasn't going to work for anybody else. It was extremely obvious. He wasn't going to take any direction. He rolled his eyes at teachers. He would argue with them, and then he quit arguing because he felt like they were disgustingly stupid. This was going on since the time he was 12. And so he always had a better idea. And the truth was, he always did. Like he'd always come out on the playground and be like, well, the way it ought to go is this way and that way. And I'd be sitting there thinking, and the other kids would be like, no, Goldhammer. And I'd be thinking, God, I think he's right. It was one of these emperor's new clothes kind of guy every day. And anyway, he wasn't going to work for anybody else. So where do we find him today? We found that he planted himself in the right spot at the center of his own universe where everybody has to do what he says. You guys are all going to eat this way. Anybody that comes in here, oh, you want to visit me at my house? Great. You're going to eat whole natural foods and do everything really healthy. I'll tell you the list of the rules. No drugs, no alcohol, no tobacco, no loud music, no makeup. Like everything's going to be natural. It's going to be my way for your optimum health because that's how I think you ought to live. Wow. And people are like, well, that's crazy. I'm not doing that. He goes, fine, don't come. I don't care if you come or not. That's Alan. Somebody else, Most people don't have that kind of gall. And then we go to people that are somewhat humble and pleasant. And then we go all the way to the person who wrote this question. Okay, so now we're down at somebody who, boy, where do they need to be? They need to be in very benign social circumstances with very kind, sweet people around them. Okay, so that people that aren't pushing them to be more than they can be, or to be more outgoing or anything that they are, but just gentle. You need to be in and around gentle people. And that's the potted plant theory. In other words, we can't change you. All we can change is the circumstances that you're in. Okay, so keep in mind, I thought of a new analogy, AJ, for my way I've been trying to talk about these things for years. And then finally, sometime in the last 2 months, this analogy came to me. And that is that other people's personalities are like food. That's what they're like. They're like emotional food for us. So, sometimes we don't need anybody around. We're kind of fasting or between meals or something. We don't need anybody. But we do need them. In other words, for our life satisfaction and human nature, you need people. So now, it's not like we're not going to say, well, who are you going to eat? But it's what time it is that you are exchanging with them, the life that you're sharing with them. You want to be around healthy food emotionally, and food that, and you don't like all food that's healthy. There'd be a lot of people that might be perfectly good people around, but they're not a good fit for you. A little too loud, a little too noisy, a little too pushy, a little too extroverted, a little too demanding, whatever it is. If that's what it is and you're uncomfortable and you're feeling pushed, then you're still not in the right place. So, that's like, I don't know, pineapples and mangoes doesn't fit you. You want apples and bananas. So that's your job. Your job is, it percolates back to a message that we've said many times on this show, work harder on your environment than you do on yourself. So that goes to your diet and your health, and it also goes to your emotional life. Work hard, and your environment is the other people that you're interacting with and the nature of those interactions. Work harder on figuring that out than trying to figure out why you happen to be sensitive and introverted. You just are. And there's nothing in the world wrong with it. It just puts some challenges in our way that we need to maneuver around.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Lyle. This was so much fun. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much, AJ. And I'll see you next month.
Yeah. And don't forget to sign up for Dr. Lyle and Dr. Hawk's True to Life webinar. The link has been posted many times in the show notes. It's also in the chat, and I hope to see everyone there. Take care, and thanks for watching. Come back at 1 when Terry Edwards will be making